So before I start my review of this new film from Jordan Peele, Us, I just wanted to say that you should probably avoid any reviews going into this film. I think it's the best way to just go into this cold, not really having like different opinions being implanted into your mind or any like theories or discussions of the themes or anything. I think you should just go into this film without knowing anything. Try avoid a trailer as well, to be honest, and just watch the reviews after you see it. I do my best to avoid reviews before doing my own reviews anyway, but I'm just saying I think a film like this probably deserves very little knowing about it before going in. So Jordan Peele's second film, Us, follow-up to Get Out, which was critically acclaimed, won him an original screenplay award at the 2018 Oscars, or 2018 I think it was. And I liked the film. I liked Get Out. Get Out was a pretty fun time. I've got to say I didn't really find it very scary. Definitely thought it was a little overhyped, but I think it was an enjoyable film to watch. The use of satire, I think, was really good in the film, and its commentary on a larger scale was pretty apt too. Definitely think the ending was a bit over the top, but that's just my opinion on the film anyway. I think it was a good film, and it really showed that Jordan Peele could potentially be a great director. However, I've got to be honest, Us is pretty underwhelming and did not live up to the hype the film has had for a while now. Unfortunately, this just didn't do much for me at all. So while you could say Get Out was more of a thriller, I think Us is definitely aiming to be on the more horror side of things when it comes to film. But for me, I can't really single out any moment in the film that scared me. And I'm not even trying to exaggerate here, but I was not scared by a single thing in this film. I think the introduction to the premise of the film was certainly the most intense part of the film, but that was very early on in the film, and you know how horror films can be. They start off pretty slow, introducing to characters, and then like 30 minutes in, you're deep in the shit. Like, that was the part where I thought this was pretty intense. Something could go completely wrong here. But that was like the only part of the film that honestly got me on edge. I think the idea of the film was pretty unique, and it definitely had potential to be a pretty intense horror, but it really failed in so many areas. I didn't really find the alternative versions of themselves, the tethered as they're called, particularly very scary, because the issue is that there's nothing really scary about ordinary looking people. Like, a lot of horror films use the suspense of the fear of the unknown. Like, that's a suspenseful part of a lot of horror films. You don't know what's going to come. You don't know what the scary monster looks like or whatever. But for this film, they just looked like ordinary people, and they were pretty sinister, but they didn't really have anything about them that was like really creepy or really eerie. Maybe sometimes they pulled some facial expressions that were weird, but there was just nothing intense about it. And you could say, well, it scared me. You know what you're talking about? This was a scary film, and horror is very subjective. It's the same with comedy, really. I mean, all films are subjective anyway, but horror and comedy, I think, are probably the most subjective, in the sense that you either find something funny or you just don't. You find something scary or you just don't. And for me, this was just the latter of that. I just didn't find this scary, and that for me just completely unravels the entire point of a horror film, because everything that it was aiming for just didn't have an impact. They attempted to build up suspense in some scenes, but they really didn't lead anywhere, or it led to something pretty predictable. They did use the score quite well. Like, the music in the film, I thought was really well worked in, but honestly, I think it was kind of wasted on a film that needed to be a bit more scary than it was. There were just a few scenes where a character looked like they were about to die, and you just knew that they weren't gonna. Like, you just knew that it wasn't gonna happen from the get-go. I think the reason why the film suffered from predictability, though, in that sense, is because a few scenes had the children in the film in danger. And if you've seen a lot of horror films, quite often they don't really ever like kill off children. Like, it's not really something you see in a film. Most films aren't ballsy enough to kind of go that extra mile and like kill off a child character, because it's quite an extreme thing. Not many people want to see that on screen, but that kind of took away from the impact in the scenes where you thought, oh no, what's going to happen to Jason, or you know what I mean? Like, you just knew that he was going to be fine. You knew both of them were going to be fine. Honestly, in the film, that the father should have died. Like, there were a few times where he was just a bit stupid, or he'd hurt himself so he couldn't really walk properly, so you would think that the tethered would catch him and try and kill him, and the amount of times he was in danger and almost died was unreal. Like, he would have died at some point because he just couldn't move properly. They repeated the same sequence twice in the film where he's just crawling away helplessly, not able to defend himself, and both times he miraculously escapes and kills the tethered. Like, to do it once is like, okay, fair enough, he's managed to get out of this situation, but to then do it again is not only boring and predictable because you're repeating the same sequence of a scene that you've done already, but it just makes it less realistic that he can manage to fend himself 2 times in a row. And of course, by the end of the film, it hits a twist, and you see this change of events that kind of changes the course of the film, and you view the film differently because you know that Lupita's character wasn't actually who she said she was. And it was cool, I guess, because it was pretty brave for them to go in that direction. But it also kind of took away from the impact, I think, from the previous scenes in the film. Like, why was she behaving the way she was? And how could it have been possible? And that kind of thing. It just really made you question the kind of like validity of what they were going for. Why was the tethered version of Lupita's character talking the way she was? Why was she saying the things the way she was? It just seemed very odd. And I admire Lupita Nyong'o's performance because I think she was fantastic in this film, definitely the best part of the film. But I think the voice that they made her put on was really kind of corny. Like, I just didn't get any impact from the way she spoke throughout the film, especially when they first enter the house and they sit down and they're about to like start talking about the reason they're doing it, and she comes out with a voice of like there once was a girl and it was... It was extremely underwhelming to me, the way she spoke. It had a sinister vibe to it. Like, many of the characters throughout the film attempted to portray this sinister vibe, but I don't think it ever really paid off. For me, I think the film's premise ended up being more interesting than the execution, which is a real shame because I do think Jordan Peele is a good director, but honestly, I think his approach to horror so far hasn't been too great, really. Like, I think he could be better at just making straight up comedy films because he's really funny. There were some funny scenes in this film. I really liked some of the humor that he used. And the one thing that the film was entirely based around, which was horror, didn't end up working for me. Again, this is obviously very subjective. My opinion is going to be very different to the people who go see this film and find it scary, but for me, I wasn't under any stress. I wasn't like sweating or feeling like I was about to die. So yeah, I'm not going to take away from the performances in this film because the children in the film were very good, and Lupita Nyong'o was fantastic in the film. She's always killing it in every film I see her in, and in this film it's no exception. She was great. I think some of the camera work was actually really good. The use of like long shots at times was actually quite impressive and made you try and look in the background for things to see if something's going to come. Obviously nothing really ever did, but that's just kind of how it worked. But yeah, overall, I just didn't particularly enjoy this all that much, aside from a few elements I just mentioned there that I think were really good. But for me, it's going to be a 5 out of 10. That's kind of how it is. I just didn't really get that much out of it. You could talk for days about the theories of the ending and how it's like representing the prison system, which I've seen a few people bring up already, and other things that I keep seeing as well get mentioned. But honestly, that's all really not really important to talk about when the rest of the film just wasn't really all that impressive for me. But yeah, if you've got any thoughts and opinions on the film, if you think I'm completely wrong, if you think I'm talking like crap, then let me know, and have a good day. Thank you for watching my review. Hope you subscribe as well if you haven't already. Thank you and goodbye.